All right. Hello, everyone. This is Christine from Flourish in the Foreign. As you may or may not know, Flourish in the Foreign is the podcast that elevates, celebrates, and affirms the voices and stories of Black women across the diaspora, living and thriving abroad, while also exploring living abroad as a pathway to wellness. Today, we are talking about dating abroad. Why? Because it is one of the most popular questions I receive. The podcast actually has 2 episodes about dating abroad. If you have not checked those out, you can check them out in the description below. Today is the first dating abroad panel in the series. We're going to have about 3 so far. And we have amazing, amazing guests to chat about dating abroad. I'm going to bring them on right now. They're going to introduce themselves and we're going to get this party started. If you have a question about dating abroad, you can put it in the comment section if you want. And yeah, let us get started with Nicole and Tadre. Hey, ladies. All right. So let us first introduce yourself. Nicole, why don't you first introduce yourself? Let us know who you are, where you've lived abroad, and maybe like a brief kind of statement of your dating ethos, perhaps.
Okay, my name is Nicole, the Soulful Expat. I essentially help women of color, exhausted women of color, overwhelmed over women of color, design a life abroad with ease, intention, and joy. I am currently in Egypt. I've been an expat approaching 8 years. I've lived in the UAE, Shanghai, China, and right now I'm on a career break, so hence why I'm in Egypt, and we'll see where I'll go next. My ethos for, I like that question. My ethos for dating. This is a really good question. Okay, what do I think about dating? I think it's a great opportunity to explore who you are and have fun and get to possibly meet your person.
All right. I like that. Tadre, let us
Yes.
know, who are you? What are you about? How long you've been abroad and where are you currently?
Okay. Well, my name is Tadre Delore Monnier, and I am a multi hyphenate creative, which means I do many creative things. What's most pressing right now is I am an online boutique owner. Beauty is universal. I have been in East Africa since January 2018. Consistently, I started out in Zanzibar, then moved to Uganda. Now I'm in Nairobi, Kenya. However, my minor was African studies, and I have a background in international human rights law. So that meant that from the age of 18, I've been traveling, working, living, going to school in Africa.
Awesome. And
And
you're dating ethos. Yeah.
my dating ethos, my dating ethos, okay, it changed this week. My dating ethos is broaden your horizons, open up to the beauty of the world. Yes.
I like that. I like that. We're going to get into it. For those of you who have joined, this is Dating Abroad. We have a fantastic panel today. This is the first panel in a series of 3 or more, depending if you like it. We have the lovely Nicole and Tadre. Now, if y'all have questions for the panelists, please put it in the comments and we will address it. But also let us know where you're tuning in from. Let us know what your experiences have been abroad, or your current dating experiences, or maybe what you're hoping your dating experience will be once you go abroad. Let us know. Also, as a disclaimer, everyone, I live in Spain. Spain is a really noisy country in general, but like we're in the midst of festival season, so you might hear firecrackers, even though it's the daytime. That's how they get down here. So if it gets a little bit crazy, I'm gonna mute myself. So just be aware of that. Let's get started though. Okay, the first thing I think, let's do like a round robin, and I'm gonna have Nicole, you kick it off. I would love to hear your best date that you've had abroad.
Wow. Damn, girl.
She started out.
Damn. That's so, gosh. I feel like I have two.
Okay, tell us.
One, it was actually while I was traveling. It wasn't in the UAE, but I was traveling. And I think what made it really great was that it was like the first time doing like several things on a date, like going and having some wine. It actually happened in Paris. I hope this person's not watching because they might be like, wow, you're the best. Uh, we went out and had wine, and I thought it was nice. Like, had a really great conversation, and I actually met this person in a different country, so it was kind of cool that I met them in another country, and here I am in France now. Had some wine, and then I really wanted to ride on a Vespa or like one of those, those little bikes. And I had that experience of getting on one of those, and then went to another place to have caviar for the first time. So I think it was just kind of like this heightened sense of just like excitement and doing a bunch of things that I hadn't done before. And I guess in my mind, thinking of a date, I don't think of it in terms of, oh, doing several things in one day, at least not at that time. I would say, okay, I have three real quick. Okay. And then my second one was that I went on a date with a pro footballer and didn't know that it was a pro footballer.
Oh, I
Yeah.
love this. I love this.
As in soccer. And he was the one that was really seeking me out. It wasn't, I went and Googled him after the fact. Excellent conversation, gentleman, amazing, just like, kicked it off. And that actually happened in Abu Dhabi. That was quite funny. And I remember coming and telling my friend, like, oh my God, he's like really a pro footballer. Like, oh my God, like, I can't believe like, and I was actually happy that I didn't know that, because maybe I would have been uneasy. I may have questioned myself. I'm like, why he want to go out with me? Like I may have kicked in some self, sometimes you think of celebrity or someone that's of a certain level, you might assume that, at least for me at that time, I would have been like, yo, why are you checking for me for? Especially because they came all the way from Dubai to Abu Dhabi. It was just, that was kind of exciting, I must say. And then my third one, I had a really nice date with this guy where we went out for dinner and we stayed until the restaurant closed. Like they had to come to us. I was so enthralled by his presence. We were so into each other. I didn't see anyone leave. I didn't see anyone. It was like we were the only one there in the restaurant, literally. And then after that, we took a long walk. And I feel like, even going back to the ethos thing, I think the thing that they all share was just being totally present, enjoying myself, feeling like loved on in different ways, and being, and I really enjoyed it. Those, none of them are my man right now, but it actually allowed me to feel more excited about dating and going out on dates. So yeah, that's a little long-winded, but those are like my three best, I would say.
I love that you have three.
I know, right? Tadre, how about you?
I think the best date that I've had, let me just preface this by saying that I haven't dated a lot since I've lived abroad. And for about, a year and a half or more, I was celibate. So I wasn't really doing a whole lot. However, I did go out on a good date in Nairobi. And this guy, NGO, he's Kenyan. And I forget where we started out, but I remember we ended up at his house and he cooked for me. And he's a really good cook. And he was like perfecting this curry chicken recipe. He didn't need no help. He didn't want me to chop nothing, just relax. And, he served me. It was excellent. We had an amazing conversation. What I loved about his house is that he had black and white framed and matted images of famous African Americans, as well as just like iconic images around his home. And he's a Kenyan guy. And then afterwards, we fell asleep on his couch watching Friday. So that was it.
I love that. I love that. I haven't dated that much abroad. Briefly, right before I moved abroad, I came to Barcelona. I came to Europe for like a spontaneous trip. and I had a layover, and I met my ex on the layover, and then I was booed up for like 3.5 years, and then now I'm single, and I haven't really dated that much. But I was taken on actually a really cute date last year. We went hiking along the Alicante coast here in Spain, and I really liked it because it was one of those things where he really listened to like the things that I like. Like I like hiking, I like being outdoors and nature, and some of like the foods. It was like real cute. It was really sweet, thoughtful. I appreciated it. So that
And the
is. Go ahead.
I was going to say, like, the common thread in all of our stories is being present and having someone actually listen to you and loving on you in a way that really resonates with you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Definitely. I think that
Yeah.
is such a major component to it. I probably should have started off with this question because I think this is why people ask about dating abroad so much. Let's talk about your dating experiences before you went abroad, and then perhaps talk about what your expectations were when you went abroad. So let's go in reverse order this time. Tadre, why don't you kick us off?
Okay, well, I will say that being born and raised in the States, my best dating experiences have been on the East Coast and then also in the Midwest. It just make them different there. East Coast, the guys are, they're pretty aggressive actually. Like you can't even get out the airport without somebody trying to holler. Midwest is like, you know, very family oriented guys. So when they take you out, like it's with intention. And like I said, with East Coast, they're aggressive, but they make it known that they actually really like you. West Coast, I moved back as an adult, um, as like a 40-plus-year-old adult. And I found that guys would play games. They weren't not even assertive. You know what I mean? They wouldn't tell you they liked you if they got your number. They would take like 7 days, 14 days to give you a call, stuff like that. So my experience dating on the West Coast wasn't so great. My expectation moving to East Africa, in Zanzibar, knowing that it's a Muslim island, Islamic island, um, I thought I would meet somebody that I could just, kick it with, or, have some sort of monogamous relationship with for the duration that I was there. Although my focus was not on dating at all, my focus was really just on me and my career. Um, and then the last question is, what has it been like?
No, 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 no. We're going to talk about that. I just wanted to know
Okay.
what your experience was before and what your expectations were. So I think, yeah. Nicole, how about you? What were
To
your experiences?
So I have a lot of similarities to Tadri, actually. It's so funny. Alignment. I could honestly say that I wouldn't even qualify what I did in New York City prior to moving abroad as dating. I think maybe because of age or just, you meet someone, you like them and they became your boyfriend. Like essentially, I don't think I was actively like, oh, I'm going out with this such a person. So if I were to be real honest, I wouldn't consider that what I was doing prior to living abroad was dating. To be honest, I was in a relationship before I moved to the UAE and was still in that situation once I moved abroad. So I didn't honestly have expectation. To be honest with you, I just didn't even think about it. To add to what Tadri said, though, I think that even like I'm from New York, as she's talked about the East Coast, like even if you're like not on the app, I mean, I know the culture of everything's changed now because of COVID and just everything else. But in New York, like if you're walking down the street, you're walking somewhere, someone's gonna holler at you, someone's going to say something to you. So I do think even when I was wondering if I was going to stay in my relationship, I just thought that once I got abroad, like it would just be natural that you're going to go out, see, tell you they like you, and right, it was going to be just like easy, like let's say being in New York. I think I had the biggest shock when I realized I had to put effort into this. Like It's not going to be like New York, and I won't be able to just and even with the way that the UAE is set up, it's not like you can just walk down the street. You drive everywhere. So I think for me, the biggest thing was like, oh, I actually had to put effort in this part of my life when it just felt like something I didn't have to think about if I was home. If I went to enough places or went to the right restaurant, the right bar, I knew I could meet someone that could possibly become my significant other. So I think that was probably, so I didn't think about it because I thought it was just gonna happen. Like like it was something that was just going to happen just because I'm Nicole and it's supposed to happen. So I would say that and I think that was a question, right? I think I missed, that was two questions, right? Like what did I think it was going to be? And
Yeah, and what your experience was at home.
yeah.
Yeah, I I think that for me, I'm from Atlanta. Atlanta gets a really bad rap for dating, and I get it. It's a strange place. It's a lovely place, but it's also a strange place. I didn't actually have any issues dating in Atlanta. I think but I will say that I wasn't pressed at all. I just freely dated and things like that. Honestly, when I decided to move abroad, I was super burnt out. So I wasn't even thinking about entertaining anybody. The fact that I met somebody on a layover was like strange and very inconvenient. And I was really kind of like, do I want to do this? Okay, I'll do it. Um, I think also now that I'm out of that situation and I'm now thinking about like, what are my expectations now? I don't know if I have any because I've heard of so many horror stories. And we're going to talk about that. Yeah, we're going to talk about it, especially because we're all in different parts of the world. I'm in Europe, I'm in Spain. A lot of people have a lot of thoughts about Spain. I have lots of thoughts about Spain. We're going to get into it. I want to talk, though, about um, baggage, right? I want to talk about what kind of baggage did you bring to dating abroad? Maybe you didn't know that you brought some when you were going abroad, but how has that baggage been revealed to you in your dating experience? For example, I will say, um, I dating abroad has taught me a lot and revealed um, maybe some trust issues. How cliche is that? It's like trust issues. Yeah, but I think even like control kind of like issues. And I think why that was exposed so much was that you're in a different culture, you're dating someone with a different culture, their expectations, their behavior and interpretations of different situations are different, and found myself wanting to control that a little bit more. I was like, hold up, this was not what I was expecting. And you need to follow this script. And they were like, no, you crazy person. Are you crazy? Right. So for me, dating abroad has really exposed that. I'm happy to say that I have and I am dealing with that. I have a therapist and we talk about it on the reg. But I want to bring that up because a lot of people are like, I'm going to date abroad and everything's going to be better if things aren't good, in their home country. And I want to talk about, well, have you thought about your own baggage? Have you thought about why it ain't hitting for you right now? Not to say that anyone watching is not saying that you're not lovely, but we all have work to do. So, ladies, whoever wants to jump in, what about your baggage? Any kind of insights so far? What has dating abroad revealed to you?
Well, I would definitely say that it revealed one that as a result of living in New York City, I did have this expectation of like swag, kind of like whatever kind of men I was accustomed to being around, that like I only wanted them to be like that. So whether it was like the swag, and not just meaning in just like clothing, just like that cool factor, the way someone's going to talk to you, like like you're accustomed to a certain language and lingo of how you feel loved or how you feel seen. And I think I was expecting like that and didn't even realize it. And just similar to you, Christine, I realized that through therapy, actually, because I was wanting this New York-ish, Caribbean-ish fella you know, and because everyone I would think was corny. Like, I mean, sometimes I'm in my
Yo, that is so real though. That is, we gotta talk
so
about that. That's so real.
so like in my mind, I would think that things were corny. I was like not really easily impressed. Like, so I realized that I was creating like a block because it was like at one point my therapist was like, Nicole, if this is what you want, then I'm gonna suggest you have to go back to New York. Like you can't go somewhere else and wanting that. Like, I mean, so that was one of the major blocks that I had. And I think too, it really allowed me to, on the flip side, think about what my values were, right? Because then it was like, I think when you move abroad, you have to think about your values, because I would say that that was a block, not really truly know what my values were. And then thirdly, my block, which still is a real sometimes, and it could be controversial, but I realized how much I felt the pressure, the one that I put on myself and outside of myself. Like, what if I'm like not with a Black man? Like, you know, like most people probably would assume that because you're moving abroad, like you're really excited about being with someone of another race. But I didn't realize that subconsciously I like want my Black man. I want my Black love abroad, right? So I think for me, even though I would go on dates with people who weren't necessarily Black, I still had my own reservation because I felt like, oh my God, people are gonna be like not happy with me, or I'm not gonna make the Black love movement. Like, you know, I'm wanting something that's outside of myself. So, and that's still something that I still like, you know, work through, you know. But I think there is that cultural pressure of wanting to meet that goal or to make that happen. And I realized that was also a barrier for me. Um, so that would be my three major one. I won't take up all the space, but yeah.
Oh, it's interesting because I resonate with what both of you said. First, I'd like to say that you don't know what you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And then, dating in Los Angeles, people move there from all over the world to make their dreams come true. So I found that in LA, people was like not wanting to commit, focused on their careers. And, the baggage that I brought with me to East Africa, I'm not really sure because, again, I don't know what I don't know. Nothing has really presented itself to me, with the exception of I had to ask myself, can I love without controlling? So that goes
Mm-hmm.
back to what you were saying, Christine. And I found myself out with a friend whom I wanted nothing more from him than just his friendship. But he was digging me and he invited me to a social gathering. And these women came up to him trying to get his attention. And he was trying to let them know, like, I'm with her. And I found myself like positioning myself to make it seem like we were actually like together like that. Put my arm around him. I got real close to him. And I had to ask myself, like, why are you doing this? You don't even want him like that. So that began my journey. Like, okay, can I love without trying to control? However, I know that I have some blockages somewhere. So I am preparing to meet up with a healer, a spiritual healer, so we can remove those blocks, and also a sound bath therapist. So whatever is in my way of accessing, monetary wealth and a good, whole, healthy relationship, we moving them right out the way.
Yes. Look, take it to the ancestors, take it to the altar. I light a candle. I do light a candle, put it on my altar, and be like, "What's up? What's going on? What y'all trying to do?
Mm-hmm.
What's happening? This is the assignment.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever it is, get your Akashic records read. Whatever needs to happen, I'm fully down with it. That's how I roll. But I will say that, Nicole, you brought up something that has been repeated on the podcast so many times. And actually, I haven't had these lovely ladies on my podcast yet. Hopefully, next season, season 3, season 2 is on its way, y'all. In case y'all wondering, I had some technical difficulties this week and got to push it back. But hopefully season 3 we'll have these lovely ladies. But in these past episodes of the podcast, I have had women who have said, and I've had guests that said that, you know, when I talk about dating abroad, they have said, I like living in XY place, but I want to marry a Black man. So I know I'm not going to stay here. I'm going to move back home. Or have talked about the freedom they feel from like dating outside of their race, and other women who've been like, I feel very uncomfortable. I feel like, how do I know I'm not being exoticized, fetishized, all these other things? It is a very complicated situation. If y'all have listened to those compilations, dating abroad part 1 and dating abroad part 2, it is a roller coaster of experiences. I've had a guest, she's a Jamaican woman in Japan. She talked about how, there is a reggae scene in Japan, and the Japanese are really hardcore into it, and they would approach her as if like they need to like add this to their collection of reggae, memorabilia. Oh, I have a partner, and she's Jamaican, and this is like I'm with it. And she was like, that wasn't, great. I've also heard from a lot of guests how they are abroad and trying to date Black men, particularly them maybe being American and trying to date Black American men abroad has been a no-go, because maybe some Black American men are like, I'm not trying to check for you. We're in a different location. Goodbye. It's so complicated. It's so complicated. And it is, it's life, right? It's how life works.
Yeah.
I will say that in this upcoming season, I do have a guest who has exclusively dated Black American men abroad. And when she said that to me, I was like, how did that even happen? She's just like, I mean, that's like, culturally we resonate. I'm like, I get why you would, but like, how? Like, how did that happen? So it will be really interesting. We have a whole list of comments and questions. So let me try to go through these really quickly before we continue on. How do I do this again? This way. One, Saiba is shouting out Tadre. Tadre, you are gorgeous, as is Nicole.
Oh, thank you. Yes, we all in there together. Thank you.
You know how melanin do. Like, that's how it works. Saiba says, I've dated abroad. The locals were more serious than other foreigners in the host country. Saiba, tell us, which country were you in and what are you referring to? There's another. Okay, she goes on. What kind of jobs or venture businesses in Zanzibar for an American? I'm Sudanese American, but always had an interest for Zanzibar and Tanzania. Okay, Tadre, what kind of jobs or ventures and businesses are available in Zanzibar?
The Zanzibari market is wide open. So I wouldn't go to Zanzibar looking for a job, particularly as a woman who presents as of African descent. Other people are able to go to Zanzibar and get jobs managing hotels and restaurants. My personal experience is that they're looking for foreigners to do that, but they're not looking for Black foreigners. So, because the market is wide open for different types of businesses and enterprises, I suggest that you think about launching your own business if you want to go to Zanzibar.
Okay. And do you have any suggestions about maybe what type of venture would work well? What is there a need for something in particular in Zanzibar?
There's a need for so many things. Definitely the technology sector. At one point, I was thinking about opening up a co-working space when I was there that did not exist. Um, Let me see, like your own cultural food. What's another one? Recycling is a big one. It's a tiny little island that, seasonally you have all of this rubbish that just washes up on the shore. And,
Oh,
and it's a limited footprint or mileage, right? Square mileage. So where does all of this stuff go? There's much stuff coming in from China in terms of plastics, and there's no recycling facilities at all. Yeah, I mean, it's wide open. I would just say Google. And if you
Okay.
want to ask me more, you can hit me up. You can DM me.
Awesome. Awesome. And I'm going to do a couple more and then we're going to continue on. Saiba, continue saying, I was teaching in Saudi for 4 years. I enjoyed the experience. Was that where you're talking about the dating, Saiba? Let us know. Let us know. And we're going to go back to questions after this. Okay. So let me look at what I try to write, and I don't have my glasses on. Trying to be cute always goes wrong. Okay. Um, okay. So I think we have a really interesting base of like this conversation. And I want to talk now about what is your approach to dating currently? Um, what is your intention, perhaps, with dating currently? I want to bring that up because I find, I am, how old am I? I'm 35. And I feel like my approach to dating is completely different than it was when I was in my 20s. Clearly, you know better. Um, and I feel like I'm really, it's really important to be intentional in everything that I'm doing. And that's what I try to tell people who ask this question, like, what's my experience going to be like? And I'm like, well, what is the intention that you set? Are you intending to just date just to date? Are you intending to find a life partner? I personally think that that's important to set those kind of objectives because I feel like in the United States, there is this idea of like, I'm just going to go with the flow and see what happens. And then people get disappointed. And I feel like probably because you didn't set an intention with yourself as to what you want truly, and you can't voice that. So, yeah, intentionality for me is my approach. Ladies, what is your approach?
I'm all about intention, but I also say I'm big on, as I said, like, if you look at my bio, I'm all about flow and ease too. I think they can all work together because one thing that I've learned um, is that, like, if I'm going on a date, like, I need to marry the person, my energy is different. It feels serious, it feels too heavy. I don't really get to see the person if this is someone that I actually really want to get to know. So, and when I say actually making them work together, as far as intention, like similar to you said, you're 35, I'm 40. I do want to get married. I do want a partner. I love my life and I want someone to come with me on this journey. If I'm going on a date, like I always share where I am in my life. Like these are some of the very beginning questions. And I think very important when you are an expat because chances are if you meet someone and they're from another country, it is really important to think about like what are some of your goals? Like, are you trying to stay in this country for X amount of time? Like, is marriage in your future? Were you married? So, of course, you do have these serious conversations about like, where's your mind? Where's your head at? While at the same time, they will say like dating. My therapist will say dating, you're just like taking applications too. Like you're checking just as much as the person is checking you out, you're checking them out to see like, does this person actually have some qualities that I care about or things that I value? So I always like to include fun by while also sharing my truth of like what it is that I want and not being scared to say what that is. So if it's like I'm looking to get married, I want a life partner. Like, I'm not going to hold back from saying that, but I don't put the pressure on someone that they need to marry me by the next date, you know? And then I think if someone could share that they're not really looking for that, they're not doing that, then I already know that maybe they'll just become my friend and I'm cool with them, but I'm not going to move along because and I think that's where like the sharing your truth is. But I always say like start with fun and have a good time. We shared that we loved our dates because we were present. So that's also something I incorporate because one of the things I do have a very strong spiritual practice, and I do believe that intention, like you want to be in a place of least resistance as well. I don't want to come into a place in a stronghold where almost someone could feel like, damn, she's looking to get married tomorrow. Like I'm just trying to like get to know who she is today. So I feel like putting both together is important for me. But I totally agree with you, Christine, in that like having a a clear intention of like what it is that I want should be said like from the very beginning. And whatever, and of course, whatever feels comfortable for you. I know some people, there's so many like dating tips and like so many things that we all listen to. And I think ultimately you have to do what feels comfortable for you, depending on the date you're on. Like sometimes it might just be a flow in that date, and like you might share more of your goals than maybe the first date. You know, like it's also what feels comfortable for you. But I think intention and having like joy and having fun on a date, I think is like important to me.
Yeah, those are all really important. There really is no right or wrong answer. I think that relationships are one of many things that human beings haven't been able to figure out. You know, you can take your time, right? You can you can get married on the second date. You can be with someone older, younger, some of your same ethnic group, someone who's not, same religion, someone who's not, and there's no guarantee that it's going to go the way you plan. So my intention is really to be open. I know that, this is just the packaging that we're in. And
Mm.
so I really don't limit myself to what a person looks like. Now, am I attracted to um, beautiful men? Yes, I'm attracted to beautiful men. I've definitely had my perspective shaped by what society says is beautiful and what isn't. Um, what else can I say about that? But I don't let that limit me. My preference is for men of African descent. So, Nicole, like, I know where you're coming from in terms of like the swag. Like, there's just a certain swag that is emulated and attempted to be emulated around the world that Black American men have. But there's also a whole lot underneath that swag. And I actually wrote an article about it on Medium. Um,
Mm.
but I'm also, interested in a connection. I'm also interested in connecting with someone who has integrity. Now, as
Mm.
far as marriage, I've been married. I was married for 10 years. I've actually been divorced longer than I was married. I think I got married at like 25. I'm not so sure that the institution of marriage is a viable one. Excuse me, I had to cough on that.
Ancestors talking to you, like, why you say that?
I just say, yeah, right. I'm like, ooh,
Spirit
okay.
guys are like, nah.
I'm really like the jury is out on that one for me. So I've actually been exploring polyamory, just researching it and just really seeing if this is something that I want. But also, like, how am I arriving at polyamory is the question that I'm asking, because East Africa is a very patriarchal society, and I'm constantly being told that men have so many options here. And my response is, well, I got options, and so polyamory is my way of taking my power back. However, I've been asking myself, well, dang, if I really met somebody that I was really into, would I want to share him? Probably not. So, I'm still really exploring, but I would say, to answer your question, Christine, my intention is to connect with someone with integrity and also to be open, but not necessarily for marriage. I'm at this place in my life where I'm like, if a beautiful being comes my way, we can love on each other until we can't. I don't know how long you're going to stay. I don't know how long I'm going to stay, but I'm not going to put these precepts on the relationship that we've been programmed to believe is a successful relationship.
I love that. You said a word, Dodger. That is so rich. That's so rich.
A
And
lot
there's
of
so many things to
ancestors
talk
try to
about
come
it.
to my throat.
You're like, what you talking about?
I know. I was like, sounds like might be a block. I don't know.
I was choking on my teeth.
Okay. For anyone who has just stopped by, this is Dating Abroad. This is the first panel discussion that we're having in this series. It's supposed to be maybe a 3-part series. It might be more. If you have any questions for the panelists, drop them. I see some coming in. I will get to them. But I actually want to ask, I want to see, well, yeah, I want each of you ladies to talk about, in general, because we're going to go deeper, but in general, what has your dating experience been in each of the countries or regions that you've been in? Like, what have been like the defining characteristics of that dating experience? Was there a certain type of expectation um, your partner, your prospective partner had? Like, was there a lot of cultural differences that you needed to navigate? Were there just different ways of dating and courting that you weren't necessarily accustomed to? Maybe there were different expectations on sex and intimacy. Anything like that you want to share? I'd love, and how you were perceived and received as a Black woman, and if that played a part in that kind of experience, depending on where you were around the world. So anyone jump in and let us know.
Okay, sure. Well, those are really interesting questions. Let's talk about sex. I'll be honest with you, I haven't had a lot of it since I've been here, but I have had a couple of experiences where I was like, dang, do African women really tell they men what they want and don't want in the bedroom, what they like and don't like? Because I'm like, you not listening, you know? Um, but I'm not in anybody's bedroom to really know what happens. And I'm sure everybody's situation is different. But like I said, I have had a couple of experiences where it was like all about him. And, and then I also knew that this particular individual was very well sought after. And I think that had to do with the fact that he was also a rugby player. But I think he just really thought he had it going on in the bedroom. He had like no techniques. But afterwards, he was like asking me, like, and I just didn't want to give him another chance. It was that bad. But I've had a couple of experiences where I was just like, oh, you are really disconnected from your body. Therefore, you cannot possibly be connecting with mine. Um, as in terms of desirability, it's interesting. It depends on the individual because my African American girlfriends and I, we've had this conversation about how, for men who are looking to exploit your finances, okay, the pinnacle woman that they want to be with is a woman of European descent. But if they can't get at her, we will do. Okay. So they won't fool with nobody of their same nationality or ethnicity, but they'll fool with us. Okay. But the golden ring, right, is the white woman, wherever she happens to be from in the world. But that's for men who are looking to exploit your finances. I'm in East Africa where I've had to be realistic with myself and recognize that I've had opportunities as a middle class Black American woman that a lot of people have not had. Um, and then there is religion, living in Zanzibar with Islam, the way that they practice. Like, if you get with somebody seriously, they're expecting you as the woman to convert. And, some women don't mind, some women are really opposed to it. Um, what else has been my experiences? I have seen one of the things that's really troubling for me is just seeing the exploitation in relationships. So I've seen brothers who, were African American, who would really like be pursuing me hard or would desire me and maybe even be intimidated to talk to me in the States. But here in East Africa or in Kenya, they have access to so many young women who are enthralled by that passport, the nationality, just the swag, the everything, the money, that they don't want to deal with me because I'm questioning and I have expectations, and
Mm.
they are here to have fun. I had some girlfriends, like, they wanted to hook me up, which is usual. People are like, no, Taja, you can't be single. I want to hook you up. And they reached out to a brother who was very age appropriate, handsome, fit, gainfully employed. And he was like, yeah, how about we all just do like a group outing and then go from there? Like, he didn't even want to chat with me solo. Um, but I have dated African American men here. When I say date, like going out on dates, I've dated African men from various parts of the world. And at the end of the day, what I'm grappling with is the self talk, because what's constantly running in my head is patriarchy and how the bullshit that Uh, can I speak in my authentic voice?
Yes, I told you that before. I said, let it fly.
The bullshit that niggas is able to get away with in the States, you just multiply that. Multiply it like
Wow.
10 times, because patriarchy really stunts the growth, and it just allows people to operate and just like, well, what can I get from her body? Like, how can I control? Oh, and I got this one over here. Like, it's been crazy. And then it's a lot of, because of the history of polygamy, you know, you got people who are accustomed to having more than one woman, and women who are accustomed to seeing other women and maybe even themselves share. So you got men who are married, who got mistresses, and they know that coming from my background as an African American woman, we not down with that. And so they'll hide that they're married from me. And, I may end the situation still not even knowing if they were married, but everything leads to like, oh, like, you was really just trying to have fun. So I could go on forever. Let's let Nicole tell us what her experience has
I love
been.
Tajay's breakdown. It's like, you know, so I started my expat journey in the UAE. And as I mentioned, I was in a relationship when I first arrived. So I wasn't really trying to like meet and greets, as one of my girlfriends calls them. But one of the things when I did start to like get on the apps, the biggest thing for me, and I saw someone say in the comments, was that idea of feeling fetishized. And I mean, sometimes it was the conversations about the quick conversations about sex and about my body, because if you post a picture, it's one thing for someone to tell you that you're beautiful or they find you attractive, but when the way that someone talks about it, it would often make me feel very uncomfortable, and then I would just feel conflicted, like, let me just take this photo down.
Mm,
So in the beginning I really felt like this. I'm just like, yo, bro, like it felt really challenging in that sense. So at one point I would just take breaks, if I were to be honest. Like, I would just take breaks from like going on the app or trying, because if you have an experience over and over again, even before you meet the next person, you're kind of accepting that that's going to be your experience again. So for me, in the beginning in the UAE, I would say, especially if it was people that were non-Black, I found that this fetishizing and talking about my features, almost as if like I was on display in a museum, and that for me made it a turn off. And then, very similar to Tadre, as she mentioned, I started to say I'm going to maybe have a different conversation with myself, and then start to talk about these conversations when I meet these people, like actually talk about race, like the very things that were being torn apart or broken down. Like, let me have these conversations up first so that you could understand what kind of woman I am and see what you're perceiving me as. And I did find that once I made that shift, I would say the situations became decent, not like off the hook, like, oh, I could write a book about it. But I found that there was a shift. And then I noticed that it was very quick for me to discern and just like not even give people like the time of day. If they were saying certain things in a message, like certain times I was just like, what? You don't need my energy for me to explain or break something down. So I would say that. And then I was just like, I'm very big on like my meditation. And I was like, okay, I need to start meeting people out. Like F these apps. Like I need to manifest meeting people in person. And honestly, so said, so done. Like I was starting to meet men literally out. So I found that when I did that, especially if they're at a place that you're, if you're at a carnival or another place that you are interested in, you can kind of feel that real energy of the person and all of that. But I would say that in the UAE, in the beginning, it was a challenge. And for some of the same things, I don't even want to repeat everything that Taji said, but I think the religion, I think the idea that sometimes you're just like on someone's like checklist, like it's an opportunity, to be with this person, and whatever ideologies or things they think about with sex, like, oh, you're going to be this person that they're going to get to fulfill this desire or this need, and many of those people, from what I would hear, is they had like a whole wife and, family, whether in the UAE or even back in the States, like, especially when we talked about Black men, especially military, like that was always like the joke, don't mess with them because they have like a whole nother family somewhere else. So I did, it definitely was a struggle in the UAE, but even still, I did have some decent moments. And I really just tried to highlight that and think about that so that I wouldn't get consumed. Because I do think that even with the dating, sometimes we hear so much of it and it's often negative that we also take it on as our own. And I've been trying to do that. Like, it's like, this is something that happened, but also let me think about also what's possible at the same time. Because if you get so consumed by it, you could feel very defeated. Like real talk, like you feel so defeated that you won't even want to put yourself out there. So I try to just do both at the same time. Like, okay, this is like a effed up experience. Let me take a break. Or let me tell you about yourself. Like I remember I went on a date with a guy and he had a whole wife that was pregnant and I did not know. Like a whole wife. And like, I mean, like, how are you so ballsy? Like, what? And like someone would have probably thought that I was like that kind of woman that's over here just like, with not even knowing. And it was my friend that like was like, oh my God, I know who she is. And I was so embarrassed. Like I didn't even know. I'm like, how are you taking me on a whole date? And your wife is probably there in the house, pregnant. So like that was pretty scary. And I think the smaller, like the UAE is really small, so like news and information can just like spread really quickly. Like you could know, sometimes certain people like not to mess around with, or the person that's messing around with pretty much everybody. And I think that's also the challenge, I think, with dating in places that are so tight knit, is that sometimes you're not wanting to date not just because of, let's say, blocks or because it's hard, but because if you're a type of person like I am, really, like I'm not trying to like share, like I can't know that, like let's say I like Taji, that's my girl, and like I'm not gonna feel comfortable like she done been with John and I'm about to be with John, like you and John in January, I'm in John in March, like like for me it might be the Scorpio in me. I like to have mine, like I'm like, no, I don't want to share. So I think that also makes it a challenge. If you're in a place, it's not even, that's an added thing. And especially, let's say if you're in a Black community, you only want to date Black dudes, and like that part can make it more complicated because you're like, yo, he was with this girl. So I would say that that's part of the challenge when I was in the UAE. And then moving forward to China, I think I did a lot of growing. I did like UAE, I did so much self-discovery, therapy, just like thinking about my values. So my mindset was totally just moving into China. I was just like, I'm gonna meet my man. Like he is out there. People were looking at me like I was crazy. Like you're not gonna meet your guy. And that's when I was actually open to the idea of I say this to a lot of people. Don't move. If dating is something that you care about, I don't think it's smart to move to a place where you would not be open to dating the nationals there or the local people there. So
Hmm.
I moved to China, even though, we all have our preference, but I moved to China thinking, okay, if I had to date a Chinese man, would I be open to it? And I said yes. Like I was just like that's something that I was okay with. And I focused my mind really on what I wanted. And for me, once I went to China, I didn't really have to date. Like I met somebody in August, and similar to you, Christine, my whole China experience, I was like in a whole relationship with someone who actually wasn't Chinese. So when people ask me about dating in China, it's like I'm like, can I really say I was dating in China, or just kind of like manifested like my whole, man for that time? So I think it's like, how Tadri said, there's no one size fits all model, but I do think I know Christine and I have this passion, and also Tadri, I would say, I think so much of it is like working on yourself, working on limited beliefs. If you need to have therapy, and not to say that it's not going to minimize those issues, but it'll help you to work through them and would allow you to have a different perspective, because relationships in general can be challenging. Moving abroad in itself is challenging. And like I want us to all be loved on, like wherever we are in the world. Like it shouldn't be limited to
Yes.
the United States. Like I feel like we are lovely people and we deserve that wherever we go. And I think that when we work on those things, having some kind of wellness practice, other things, it will help you to move through it. Because there are also people that want to love on us,
I
as
agree with
Yes.
that.
Yeah.
And, one of the things that I try to catch myself doing is speaking more about what I want to happen versus what I don't want to happen.
Hmm.
And I had a really horrible, bizarrely comical date on Wednesday. I shared it in my stories. I
Mhm.
told, one person about it, and I'm like moving on,
Mm.
so really like saying these things out loud, but not harping on them and not ignoring like what really just happened. I was on Bumble, which, the app is all right. And like I said, I'm open. So I was like, let me just open myself up to somebody non-black. And I saw that there was a white American guy on there, and he was chatting, and I was like, okay, where are you from? And it turned out he was like from North Carolina or something. And he was like, where are you from? And I was like, I'm from LA. Dead silence. Like he disappeared because he wanted an African woman, but he didn't want a strong Black American woman, a strong African
Mhm.
woman. He was not looking for that. He was looking for someone to manipulate and
Mhm.
control. You know what I'm saying? And so,
Mhm.
the other thing that we haven't touched on is like dating beyond a certain age,
Mm.
and what does that look like amongst the populace that gets married so early, comparatively early, and in a culture in which divorce is severely frowned on. Who am I going to date over 40? And do they want kids? Because I'm postmenopausal and I'm not interested in birthing children. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, that's a whole nother conversation we could get into when we're ready.
No,
Yeah.
I
And
think
we're,
that's
go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say, I mean, I'm 40, but sometimes, no one ever believes me. So, but I think if someone hears that number, then they're like, they understand that, like, oh, she really serious. Like, she's trying to get married. Like, she really probably want to have these babies like tomorrow. So I definitely understand. But I think it just goes back. Like, I'm always thinking, like, I'm always affirming myself. Like, somebody out there want to love me, want to give me them babies and get married, and like want to do all the things. And like sometimes if I don't have evidence, then maybe I get to be the evidence for someone else. Like when I went abroad, when I went to China, like I mentioned, I met somebody in August, and no, I moved in August and met someone in November. And my two other Black girlfriends told me that if it hadn't been for me, seeing me have a boyfriend, they would have not even considered like putting themselves out there to date in China, because of all the places, most people don't think of Black women dating in China. And I realized that how much even just seeing your story, like whether negative or positive, it really impacts someone. And dating is something that I don't think, or just love, we don't talk about that much. Like I feel like the expat experience is often just talking about how much money we save, which I'm all about the coins. It's always talking about all the trips. I'm all about the trips, but it's almost like it's like not a normal conversation to talk about like love and wanting to be in dating or even just partnership or companionship, especially when it comes to like Black women. It's almost like something is wrong with you. And I really want to normalize that aspect too of moving abroad, because it is something that's just like kind of on low on the radar. And I don't know if it's because we only highlight all the bad things, because I think that those are always real. And I think it is important. Like people should know the bad, the good, and ugly. But I just would want us to all amplify all of those things so that you don't know that your story, like, even just hearing you speak, Taja, like I feel already inspired. I mean, the fact, Christine, that you moved abroad, based on someone you met on a layover, like I love that. Like to me, it gives me like, it's almost like you're giving me permission to do that too. Like, oh, I might take a trip and meet somebody. And like Christine doing it actually gives me permission to actually have that. Like seriously, because when I was younger, like people would say you don't do things for love. Like, and of course, I'm not saying not to have discernment. I'm not saying all those things, but I think it's always seen as this minimized portion of our life. Like, oh, you're not supposed to and I mean, that's why I was so excited when you said you wanted to do this, because I just think that is important. I want women to know that they can be loved on abroad. They can go on amazing dates. They could have some challenging dates. They can learn about themselves on a date. They can meet women who are, I mean, because I have also friends who've met people abroad and are married, and just making sure that we highlight all the different experiences so that someone doesn't only consume one aspect of it and think that that has to be what it's going to be, but more like, oh, this is just a collection of some of your experiences that you might have. You might have people, so I think that that's like so important for me. And just like, I mean, of course, Christine, you having this on your platform is so important, but to really share that.
Yeah.
Definitely. I agree. I think you just read me, Nicole, because I definitely have been a person who minimizes dating abroad, rolled my eyes when people ask me about it. I'm just like, it's just dating. Who cares? But, the thing is that partnership is a legitimate reason as to why you may want to change your life. Do you want to move abroad solely for dating? I don't know. I wouldn't, but like you could if you wanted to. But I agree with you. I think it's so important for representation, for there to be representation, and it not to be felt like it's high stakes, like it's all or nothing, or it's going to be only one experience or another. There's so many different experiences. And I mean, as both of you ladies have said, we deserve to be loved. We deserve to have the experiences that we want to have. And it's not all bad, even though the bad things do get amplified because it could be crazy, like, because people are crazy out here. My experience here in Europe, in Spain, and I've had several guests who are also in Spain, is very interesting, we'll say. I will say that fetishism, exoticism is a thing for sure. Being called chocolate, bonbon, things like that. And I'm like, look,
Not bonbon, wait.
I can call myself chocolate. I can call my girlfriends chocolate. I don't know, you can't call me chocolate. Okay, that's how it works. You don't call me. Don't do any of that. No, no, no. There's definitely been experiences where guys have said to my guests and even to me, they want to try a Black girl. I'm like, we're not doing that. That's not what it's about.
Not
I
try.
have Right? Like we're like, what is this, like Costco? We're passing out samples? Like, what the hell? That's not what's happening here, sir. We're not doing that. I think what has been a positive, I think, about being here in Spain in particular, is that there actually isn't a lot of pressure on dating and being partnered by a certain age. It's a longer kind of timeline. People are not really pressed. And so there's that. I think also for desirability, um, I definitely feel desired here. I don't feel like Spanish men, and this is general, are necessarily my type for various reasons. But I feel like I feel desired because I do stick out, and like, you know, there ain't nobody looking like me. And they're like, Spanish women have their lane, and it's very different, and we don't compete. Like, I feel like we're not doing the same things, girls. We're not doing the same things. So I feel fine by that. I will say that I think I've had several guests, like in Italy and other places, that do feel like it's an advantage if you are open to date interracially to be in Europe. I'm not sure how I feel about that because I've also had, I know people who I haven't had on the podcast who have dated Black men successfully or happily partnered here in Spain with Afro Spanish or of other ethnicities or nationalities rather, and it works. I would say though that I think in the Spanish culture there is a casualness about relationships, and so if you're looking for something for like marriage or I don't know, defining partnerships, it may not be the place for you. It wasn't my experience. Like my ex was like, "Yeah, we go together. Like you and me, we go together forever." And I was like, "Oh, okay, okay." In hindsight, that might have actually been a red flag, but we can talk about that later. But I will say that it's been an interesting experience in blackness and in how I perceive my own blackness. Because this is the thing, here in Europe, you're black. Like everybody sees you, you're black. Cool. But then I open up my mouth and they're like, "Oh, you're American."
You're a different
And
type of Black.
yeah, and I don't know. I still struggle with that. I still struggle with it, regardless if people think it's good or bad. Because I just be like, but because being Black American, my dad is from Trinidad, so Caribbean, but like being very much Black American, where I feel like we all Black, like that's it. To be like, I don't know, labeled, segregated, given different types of value, feels very strange. I don't really like it at all. I say that people who are interested in dating here in Spain, obviously be open to dating white guys because it's a white country. Like there are black guys, but like just letting you know,
Yeah.
like you. I've had guests who are like, they live in Spain. They're like, I'm leaving because I want to date and marry a Black man. That's what you might need to do. I think also, though, you need to date, if you're going to be in Spain, date a Spaniard. You need to make sure that they've been somewhere, I would say, because that's a huge difference. Dating someone that has had an international experience is a completely different kind of experience
I
of
agree.
what they're going to say
So
to you, right?
I actually lived in Mallorca,
Mm,
not very long, Mallorca, Spain. And my experience there was when I would walk down the street, men would try to touch me. And I
oh
would
no.
have to like move out the way, like, it's not okay for you to touch me. Women would come up to me and just tell me, like, in a sarcastic way, that they hated me, my skin and my body. And oh my God, we hate you. Oh my God, just look at you, look at you. Um, and I actually ended up dating an Italian guy for 2 years. Um, and there are definitely African men in Mallorca, but they were Francophone, and they were also recent immigrants, that had survived that journey across the
Mm,
ocean or the strait, to make it to Spain. And so, there was a difference in terms of not just language and class, but, just culture and everything. Um, But I do remember meeting this Canadian guy who was a skipper, and he would come to Mallorca because it's the capital of yachting. And he would hire himself out for wealthy Europeans and just take them island hopping throughout the Mediterranean. And he was trying to get with me so bad. He had definitely exoticized me. He would call me dark girl. I've never been with a dark girl before. And I was just like,
Sir,
oh my
what?
God. Like, yeah, it was
Yeah.
interesting, and I was broke at the time. And so I knew this man was like willing to finance a lifestyle and do, but it was like I don't have it in me to do that, and I was like, no. And then anecdotal, I went to his place to go so we could go out one night. And anyway, he had like these naked women mannequins, female mannequins in his place, and he had named them.
Mm-mm.
Child.
I'm glad you survived that. That sounds crazy. That sounds like the beginning of a horror movie or something.
I mean, you think you could write a book.
I need to clear out this energy, y'all. Just
Yes, let release.
All right, we have a bunch of questions and comments. I'm gonna try to go through them, y'all. Bear with me, y'all. I will try to get to your questions. Shannon says, have any of you found that being fetishized is really common in your dating experience abroad? Okay, we kind of touched on that, but if anyone wants to add on to that, you go ahead. What else we got?
I can say that, kind of with the fetishization, but not so much, is this what's the word I'm looking for? This extreme adoration for African American culture. And they try to get it through me. So it's like, oh, I love hip hop
Oh,
and
it's
I love
always
this
that hip
movie
hop.
and da da da. And then it's like, oh, but then there's you. You know what I'm saying? So if I got you, that kind of legitimizes me. I got a piece of the culture. Like that's something I've experienced.
It's like you're like the fifth element. They're like, oh, we needed you. And then it's all come together. You're just like, what is wrong with y'all? Like therapy or some other sounding board. It's very, very strange. We have a comment from Adelia. Hey, Adelia. I'm convinced that the reason women over 40 are considered less desirable is because we see through the patriarchal BS. They don't want a woman who can call them on it. I think so too. It's so interesting because I mean, we've all kind of mentioned it, but there is definitely something about uh, men going abroad. I'll definitely say Western men being abroad and them being like, no, I want to rule the roost. It's something that have had a lot of women say about Colombia, especially. They're like, American men, Western men are not checking for anyone who is not Colombian because it's not that they're like, oh, this is my type of Latina woman. It's like, okay, sure, there's a preference. But they're like, they want to feel, and they want to subjugate people. And I'm like, they want to really exercise that patriarchal power nonsense. They don't want to be questioned. Uh, they want to be their alpha self. They want to live out their high value man fantasy kind of nonsense.
High value.
They be thinking that, and I'm just like, wow, how fragile is your identity if you can't be questioned on your behavior, if you can't be held accountable for your behavior, the things that you say and how you move. You need to lord your money, and that's what it comes down to, over these women, so that you can have respect, so that you can feel a certain kind of way. It's interesting.
And
It is
it's not
interesting.
just, I've seen it. It's hard, coming from a place of people who were enslaved and who were sexually violated, and exploited. It's difficult being in Africa where I feel safe and I feel free, but then I also see the sexual exploitation, particularly of young African women and girls. And it's by European men. It's by all types of men. I'm a just be real with you. Um, And, they see me and it may not register to them until I speak that I'm older. But I remember, being in Watamu on the coast, and I was looking for a place to just kind of like lay out on the beach and enjoy. And these Italian men were like, here, come sit over here, come sit over here, because they're accustomed to dealing with, young African women who don't have bank accounts, you know what I mean? And who are also looking for a sponsor. There's such an imbalance in terms of power, in terms of money and age. And I'm watching these men, and they're particularly European men who are in their 70s and late 60s, sometimes on with walkers,
Yes.
canes, and wheelchairs. And they got a young African girl with a new baby. And I'm just like, oh my God. But you can get away with that here. And it's hard to say, like, what did she say? Who's zooming who? Like, it's hard to say who's getting over in that situation. But that's also a goal of some women that I've met who are just like, oh, what type of guy do you like? And I'm thinking qualities, and they're like, oh, I like white guys. They want to get with a
Ooh.
white man and they want to have a biracial baby. Okay, but I'm getting off topic. Sorry.
Girl, we
You
could
need like a
we could talk
documentary.
about that. We could talk about that. I will say that experience, I've had that experience here in Spain. I've been propositioned. Actually, all the women I've interviewed that live in Spain, we've all been, or in Italy, we've all been propositioned as prostitutes, which is interesting. That activates a certain uh, feeling, especially being Black American, where we have that patriarchal notion of you need to make sure you don't dress like you're fast, or what are you doing, and things like that, especially as little Black girls. So when you're propositioned like that, my first thing was like, what the hell was I doing for people to think I was a prostitute? Oh, I was just sitting here reading a book, like, or my friends being out, they were in the grocery store getting some tomatoes. That has been very intense and crazy, very triggering. It's not an experience I have had uh, often. I've had it like 3 times, and obviously I remember those 3 times very distinctly. But it has happened, and it is very strange, and it is very disheartening, in particular because here in Spain and in Italy, there have been, documentaries and exposés about human trafficking, sex trafficking that happens. And I think they're well aware of it. I would say that here in Spain, I think it was announced maybe 2 weeks ago, is the second country behind somewhere else, maybe Thailand, where there are, I don't know how to say it, like the most Johns in the world, like the most men who solicit prostitutes in the world.
Wow.
So with that in play, it's like, okay, maybe that's the reason. But I think there's so many different layers as to someone seeing you being like, you're open for business. Look, if someone wants to be a sex worker and do that, that's fine.
Right.
However, I don't think you would position anybody with any profession when they're like going to a grocery store, like an accountant going to get a tomato jar, like, hey, can I ask you a quick question? No, because they're not, on the clock. So it's a very interesting thing where, myself and some guests have experienced like this thought that just your Blackness makes you open and available. And then they get their feelings hurt when you're like, what the fuck are you talking about? And make a scene. Because a lot of, where I'm from Atlanta. Like, I'm gonna make a scene. I'm gonna talk, and I'm gonna say, you open up your wallet one more time, I'm gonna rob you. And then we're gonna talk about it. Like, what you want to do? Like, let's explain the situation. I thought you were just gifting me money, sir. But that for me has only happened with the old men. And the guy, one of the men that have propositioned me was on a walker. Like, he walked himself, and I thought, oh, look at this little abuelo.
What can you do?
And then he
like, you can't do nothing.
I was like, what? No, hell
I
no.
was actually almost arrested in Madrid going to a flamenco performance. And yeah, they were about to put me in a paddy wagon because they thought I was a sex worker. And luckily, I called my friend right away and I was like, bring my passport. And because I only had my driver's license on me. And he told me, he was like, I got to let you know, if you were not African American, it would have been over for you. I got too many African friends. And he was just like, no. Yeah, they thought I was a prostitute. And that happened to me twice in Spain.
It's it's intense. It's intense out here. Let's get to some more questions here. Did I press it? Okay. How do y'all recenter yourselves when you get discouraged on the dating journey, particularly when abroad? That's a good question because look, it's adulting abroad, right? So sometimes you don't have as much of a support system. Sometimes all the other aspects of living abroad get you down, and you don't need that one other thing where you're just like, really, really. So how do you guys recenter yourselves when you get discouraged?
I think talking to people who are having a mix of experiences, reminding myself what my goals are, someone that's going to pour into me and affirm me. Of course, having my own practices, whether it's journaling or maybe writing down, maybe if there's a theme or something that's repeating, like I would definitely, maybe that's something that I need to look at. Um, but definitely a wellness, some type of wellness path or wellness practice that you have in place, and having like a solid community. And I said, just kind of like what I talked about, you don't want someone that's going to make you feel worse than what you do already about the situation. And you want to be heard, which is most important, like someone that's going to hear you out, and at the same time someone that will reassure that, because this is part of the process. And to be fair, even though this is a living abroad conversation, like I speak to some of my friends back home in New York and they are having similar situations. So it's not to say that just because we are expats, like, people are living amazingly like in New York or Chicago. Sometimes my dating situation is actually better than theirs sometimes. Like the fact that I'm actually going on a date, right? So I think the fact that you just remind yourself that it's sometimes this might be part of the process. You're not alone. Um, someone definitely out there that's going to love on you and wants to love on you. You just haven't met them yet. Um, and give yourself grace. I think sometimes what can get mixed up with having intention and having a goal is that sometimes because we get so clouded by one experience, we forget that it was just one date. It wasn't like a lifetime. Um,
Mm.
but whatever gives you solace and peace, I just said a bunch of things that work for me. You have to find what would make you feel comforted during that time. And then I would check into that whenever. And like someone said in the chat, I always do it. Like sometimes I just take a break, just like anything else. Like take a break. Like if something, I wouldn't continue going on an app. Like if you're having a funky time, like kind of reset.
Yeah. Those are, I love how you keep saying there's somebody out there who will love on you, who wants to love you, but you just haven't met them yet. And you and I were both Scorpios. That's why, you know what I'm saying? But I do want to say that I have a daily meditation practice where that helps me set my intentions. I did have a pretty disappointing situation once, and I knew I needed to raise my vibration. I allowed myself to feel what I was feeling, and then I just closed the curtains in my house. I turned off the lights and I started to play some house music, and I was dancing like an expert and a crazy woman. Like, just rolling on the ground, just jumping, just turning, doing all these spins. But that was my way of raising my vibration. Um, Another thing that I do is I have a list of characteristics that I would like in a man. You know, these are optional and deal breakers. I save them in my notes on my phone. And when I have a crazy situation, I just read those characteristics and I'm just like, my man is, and I just start naming all of these characteristics. And, that helps to just like to shift the energy. And as you said, it was just one experience.
And I wanted to add to what you said, Tadre. I highly suggest, like, I also like dancing, but I also created you know how like some people like playlists? I actually have a love playlist. So I think of like all my love. I know people say they get sad with love songs, but like I always tell people I love love. So I have a playlist that, because we all want love. We want all the things that we desire because of a feeling. So I like to have a playlist that evokes me into that feeling. So there are certain songs, like you can tell me that I didn't have a man, like I wasn't married. Like I'll listen to it and I'm like waiting for, I'm like, where he at? He not in the kitchen? Like, because I'm like so in that vibrational space that you could not tell me he wasn't in here. Like, I think whatever that thing that brings you to that, it really is vibration, as you mentioned, Tadri. Like whatever that can evoke that emotion. I mean, think about it. When we listen to Adele, when she had that song, we all, regardless if we were in a relationship, we felt like we were in her situation. And I kind of connected to that. So if you have like a playlist or you're really into music, like I definitely have like if I'm feeling a little doubtful about love and like whatever, I like have this whole playlist. And girl, like
Share your playlist. You should share
yeah,
your playlist.
yeah.
Yes. Nicole, you should definitely share your playlist with everyone. And Tadra, you should definitely share that article you had mentioned earlier with everyone as well.
Okay.
But I'll go back to what you just said, Nicole. That's what I do. I utilize music. I'm a big visioning person. Like I try to sit into that space of really not just like visualizing, but really embodying what that ideal situation feels like. And when I feel like I can't, I recognize that there's something that I haven't dealt with. And I just started doing this technique I learned maybe 2 months ago, where it was really about what apology are you expecting from someone, especially with dating? Like if it's something didn't go well, you felt disrespected or something, which apology are you waiting on for you to move on with your life? Like, why are you waiting on that? And so taking a piece of paper and writing out that apology that I feel like I deserve, writing it to myself, but then taking it a step further, and all the items that I'm expecting this apology from, how have I not been giving that to myself and seeking that kind of affirmation or seeking for someone else to feel that in me? And how can I then give that to myself now? Once I did that exercise, I could sit and I can vision and taste and like get all in it. I was like, oh yeah. Right. I am in it. And it made me feel really happy and content in the meantime. It didn't feel like I'm waiting. I don't feel pressed because I know what it feels like. And it makes me actually even more confident about going out there and not feeling so nervous, because I'm like, I already know how it feels. So really, I'm just trying to catch that feeling. I'm going to chat. We're going to have this conversation. I'm not going to feel like I got to be everything and all these things, because I already know what I'm feeling. And that's work, y'all. I'm telling you.
That's a really valuable tool. I just wrote it down. Yes. And please share that afterwards, because I want to do that as well. That's such a valuable tool.
Yeah, I got it. I got it from another podcaster, a way better podcaster, Dr. Tama. She's a psychologist. She has a podcast called Homecoming. She had this episode in January, I think it was called How to Move On from Not Receiving an Apology That You Think You Should. That's not the title. It was something way better than that. But when that dropped, I listened to that like 20 times that week, because Spirit was like, why have you not given yourself permission to move on? A lot of times we get caught up in the indignity of a situation. We are indignant and it's self-righteous because you have done me wrong. And they could be foul as hell, like you're foul. But how can we move on? Because sometimes people are sorry or sometimes they're not. And even if they were sorry, that doesn't actually give you anything, give you permission. It doesn't actually give you the fuel that you think you need to move on. And that was a game changer for me. I was like, oh, okay, because I could write this letter and I could look at this, and then I took it to my therapist too, and we worked on it, and I feel great. So let us move on. I know we have more questions or more comments. Shannon says, navigating the craziness in dating can be so draining. I find having to protect my mental is so important. Yes, 100%, 100%.
And I highly suggest therapy. Like we all mentioned it. Definitely, I think having a therapist, if affordable for you, should definitely go with you on your expat journey. Because sometimes you have things that you're carrying, like what Tadri said, like sometimes you don't know what you don't know. And sometimes you might be the thing that's in your way. Like sometimes it's so easy to just trust or notice what we see in the physical form, but sometimes there's things within us that we don't have the words for it, or something maybe we faced, maybe a prior relationship or something that happened before, and we're carrying it and it's materializing or manifesting in some of these situations, not all, but I think it's just like real helpful.
Yes. All right, ladies, we have gone over. I didn't even notice we've gone over. We've been talking for an hour and 30 minutes. Y'all, if you have any last minute questions, this is the time to ask, because I'm going to wrap it up right now. So if you got any other questions, bring it on. And I would love for both of you to kind of just like share some last reflections on dating, maybe what your intention is for this year as you approach dating. Some insights. I don't know, just something, whatever's on your heart that you want to share.
I find that the more that I take care of myself, and I know we both have a passion for holistic wellness, I feel that dating just becomes easier, regardless if it's good or bad. I really allow myself to flow with it. I have I'm not, I don't know. I just carry a lightness with me, just a lightness of being, to be honest. Like the more that I'm focused on myself and what I can do to be a better person, is the easier it becomes in attracting people that are a true reflection of what I want to see in myself. And it just adds to the dating experience.
Yeah, I will say unlearn the patriarchy and trust your gut. We always hear that you're supposed to trust your gut, and sometimes that's easier said than done. And just to share, I recently had an experience dating that was very undesirable. And I knew I did not want a second date with this person. However, because of the programming, I was just asking myself, like, are you being too mean? Are you, rushing to judgment? Maybe you should give him another chance. And also just wanting to be liked, And I really had to, talk to myself like, you already know what it is. Trust your gut. This ain't it, and you give this person more time, they're going to show you more of themselves. So that would be my message to the women. Just continue to trust your gut and, check yourself and unlearning the patriarchy, which is inside of all of us.
Ooh, that was, yes. Amen. Amen. Y'all don't have to be nice. We could be civil, we could be kind, but we don't gotta be nice. And we don't gotta do that. We can be true to ourselves. We don't have to say, oh, we might hurt your feelings. Look, that's part of dating, is preferences. I prefer you, I don't prefer you, you prefer me, you don't prefer me. It is what it is. But let's not waste our time in 2022. Let's not waste our time. All right, ladies, thank you so much for joining me. I'd love to have y'all. Y'all know I have 2 more of these sessions planned. If you want to join in, you let me know. I'll send y'all the link for those times. Thank you all for stopping by. This is going to be a series. We're going to have it. It's already scheduled on YouTube, so you can put a reminder there for you. If you have not listened to Dating Abroad Part 1 or Dating Abroad Part 2 on Flourish in the Foreign, those episodes are linked in the description. So go ahead and take a listen. And let me know what you guys think, right? This is supposed to be an open and honest conversation. This is for the betterment for all of us. You know, having healthy relationships impacts our wellness, and we want that. We want that for every single person. So, oh, here come the fireworks. So remember, everyone, it's not about moving abroad, and it's definitely not about just being abroad. It is about thriving abroad. So go abroad and cultivate a life well lived. Until next time, bye.
Bye.